All right, those religious freedom laws, they're shaping up to be a very dicey issue. I'm not just talking about what happened and didn't happen in Indiana and the contortions that Governor Pence went through, but for Republicans nationally, anyone who thinks the culture wars were over has not been paying attention. There will be a major issue in 2016, and, Politico, I think, put it well. They said this is their poison pill, saying, who was just pleased as punch with the new law? Top-tier Republican presidential hopefuls, Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, as well as other potential candidates, Perry, Jindal, Carly Fiorina. Jeannie, I don't know. I think if you got in a back room and they said, there's no cameras here, tell us the truth. If you got a chance to do it over again, would the Bushes and the rest of the world have said, you know what, let me just come out against what they did in Indiana. Not try and have it both ways, because then you have it no way. Will they be better served, instead of trying to play to the base here, to take a position that in the end they're not going to get killed for coming out against these freedom laws, or not?
Yeah, they would be better off, because here's the problem. This is not a typical base issue. If you look at the demographics, young people, over 60% of young Republicans favor gay marriage, right? If you look at who came out against these laws, corporations. Well, those are two big components of the Republican base. So right there you have somebody like Mike Pence, who, by the way, is a good guy, a potential candidate in the lower tier, who shot himself in the foot by doing this. He never should have done this. And, I think what happened was, like all the other states, they thought they were going to push this through. Nobody was going to listen. They were going to appease a small portion of their base and move on. And, of course, then it came to hit him in the face. And so I think they would be well served to come out and say that they are against these laws. And, because in a general election, you lose a lot of momentum when you have this on your back, and you're going to have all these people out there with that.
Is there lessons learned, though, Jeannie, where they say, okay, you know what, on issues of late-term abortions or on issues of assisted suicide at the end, when you look the same kind of polling here where people say, you know what, like, at least as it relates to private issues, a loved one going through a very painful final chapter in their lives and how much involvement from the government. I can keep going down the list. You know what I'm talking about. It seems that the Democrats are saying, time out here. All we got to do is push them in a corner, and they're going to keep swinging. They're never going to draw that line until basically corporate America does it for them, or until every Sunday talk show humiliates them enough, or the late night shows where they have to. Do they take a lesson from this and they say, I won't get through a primary if I don't do this. I got to do this.
No, they absolutely should. And I think that's why this was kind of a watershed moment, because it was so fast, the corporate backlash on this one, and it took them by surprise. You've got Eli Lilly, you've got, Walmart coming out. You can't be the governor of Arkansas going against Walmart. The minute Walmart spoke, they were done. So they absolutely should take a lesson. And, will they? I'm not so certain they will, but they absolutely should. And, I do differentiate, though, gay marriage from some of the other issues. Late-term abortion, for instance, I think is a very different issue.
You're not being cynical enough, both of you, in my modest opinion, because corporate America and those that are saying, hold off, this is not the direction we want to go in, that's what they're saying now in 2015. It's not the presidential election year. I predict now, gaming it out, that in 2016, in key battleground states, we're going to see statewide referendums and ballot initiatives on these very issues that are going to be used to galvanize the base in order to pull out votes in November.
Okay,
and then corporate America is going to benefit from that, and that's smart.
Really?
It's great.
Because corporate America, now you're the folks at Walmart, right? In Bentonville, Arkansas, wherever they're headquartered. The backlash they're going to get in other places, if as a company they're standing behind.
You could be opposite these social crusades and these social issue crusades, and stand with other people who believe in common sense, personal freedom, and civil liberties, and yet still understand you're going to benefit from a Republican administration.
But wouldn't they face the inevitable pressures that they're going to have to move headquarters to do whatever else?
No, they're opposed to this now, and they benefit from a Republican if and when they win. So I think we're going to see in key states ballot initiatives on these social issues, some of the ones you mentioned, end of life.
Which draws out Republican voters, and you think then benefits these corporations?
Absolutely.
Because of the Republican base comes out.
But they were right now for being opposite these what I think are very hateful efforts, and they're going to be right then.
The only disagreement I have with you, Michael, is if they have a ballot initiative, which makes sense to me, your point, and it goes against liberties for people that the vast majority of the public find reprehensible, then they're going to turn around and say to the corporation, you're choosing to incorporate in the state that basically supports discrimination. Are you going to move your headquarters or not? You're going to say, they can say it's not up to me, but the public's going to say it is.
They could even campaign against the ballot initiative and yet still benefit from the eventual winner if it goes their way.
All right. Well, I'll give you another social issue that if you believe the polling here, the public's coming out strong against, and we're talking about some swing states here like Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio. In all of them, they support legalizing marijuana. And Andrew, I bet you, and you've been following this closer than anyone I know, that if in 3 months from now, 6 months from now, all those numbers, if the trend lines are right, they all keep going up.
So they probably will.
So politically, in 2016, can you be a nominee of a party and say, I support this. Let the states decide here, but I'm behind it.
You know, Rand Paul and Ron Paul before him benefited from that very position because their libertarian positions on social issues led to, hey, the government needs to take a hand off on this. And so you wound up with some crossover support for both of the Pauls from very liberal Democrats who thought that was a very big issue for them. We don't actually know how it plays in a more detailed sense because in all the places where it's legal in the United States recreationally, it's been done by voter referendum. It hasn't been done by a legislative body. There's been no politician to take the flag and lead the charge on
Well, what do we
this.
know, Andrew, in terms of the metrics? Has it made money? How much tax revenue has it generated?
Tons of money. It's made so much money in Colorado that they're actually trying to figure out a way to stop giving the money back to voters because they have another ballot measure in place there that says after a certain amount you have to give money back to the voters in terms of refunds. They've made so much money there and they want to dedicate it all to schools and other obligations that the state has. It's made so much money they almost don't know what to do with it.
Does this feel too early to you, Dominic,
Yes.
next year? Or do you think that the smart politician gets ahead of this and realizes that people under 35 don't look at it the same way as people over 35?
I just don't see a major candidate running for president jumping out there on this issue. I just don't see it. Those numbers are not really high enough from what I could see here to justify going out there on a limb with your entire campaign at stake for supporting this. I just
You know
don't
what
see
other
it.
numbers aren't on the screen right now? Electoral votes, and those are 3 heavy electoral vote states. You're going to have to win 2, probably all 3 if you're going to win the White House. It makes more sense for a Democrat to go ahead and say, yeah, I'd be in favor of at least exploring this possibility, but you're not going to poach any votes away from the Republicans. A Republican a presidential candidate who comes out and says, I'd be thinking about exploring it, as Rand Paul probably will, might poach a few votes from the Democrats.
But here's the other thing. Is that an issue that is in the top 5 of what people vote on when they vote for president? Not
No.
at this point. And
No.
so are you really going to benefit, as Dominic said, really that much
Youth.
from coming out ahead?
Youth, the
But
25
youth
and under
don't turn
demographic.
out.
But they
But
have
they
in
don't
they have
turn
in
out.
08, they did in 12, they could very well again in 16. if
In
there's
8
another
was the
landmark candidate.
highest, and it wasn't even that high. So, I mean, they just don't turn out. So I don't if I wouldn't recommend you jump at it. I would recommend you say, let the state decide.
How about forgetting presidential? It gets put on the New York ballot initiative in New York. You think we'd be surprised by the final tally? You think by a healthy margin people would vote to legalize it for recreational
We
use?
started off with medical marijuana, and then you could go to decriminalizing marijuana.
So you think it's gotta go in
and then
stages?
Both
I
already-
believe
we're
it goes
We're
in
already there
stages.
on both.
Oh, okay. So what he said.
I don't
and then you open it up for tax purposes.
It requires some state lawmakers with the political courage to actually push for it, and some leadership, whether it's a Skelos or a Hasty or a Cuomo, to actually put some muscle
Let's
behind
not
it.
forget
and-
the Republicans that supported marriage equality in New York lost their election.
That's right, and there's not a lot of political courage to always be found in all that.
Translation, Richard, it is not going to happen. That's
But
a
you know
direct
what? And
answer.
I'm conflicted on the issue, so it's not like I'm driving
Plus,
it.
the governor
But-
doesn't support
But
it.
can I just say, they've already said that they're not going to prosecute the low-level offenses. So now if you're just being, to quote my friend here, cynical for a second, you say, if I'm not going to prosecute it, right, I'm not really going to criminalize it, why don't I make some revenue off of this thing, right? I mean,
but do you want to really risk turning off potential key voters?
I think you've asked your own question.
I've got it. Atlantic City. Legalize it in Atlantic City. It'll help rebound the economy. Christie
tried
could use
everything
the help.
else there.
Right. Why not?
And people won't
Why
complain
not?
as much about what's going on.
Right.
Right. All right. It is opening day in the Bronx and in Washington, where the Mets are finishing up their opening day. And it's also the NCAA championships tonight here. A big day in sports. We'll tell you about more of that after this.